Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this live webinar series on the Legal Expert Guide to Data Breaches and Ransomware Attack in Southeast Asia. My name is Ng Woan Na, and I'm the Regional Legal Advisor and representative of both ASEAN and China Desks based in our DFDL Bangkok office. And I'll be very pleased to be the moderator for today's discussion. And just a brief introduction on DFDL, we are a full legal and tax advisory firm based in Southeast Asia, an ASEAN-born firm with nearly 30 years of history. We have developed dedicated regional and sector-based key practice groups with technology and compliance being one of them. Our discussion for today will focus on the prevalence of data breach incidents and ransomware attacks in Laos. And as all of us may be aware, incidents on this front have increased at an escalating speed as a result of a shift of the global consumers' usage towards online services, and with companies collecting an increasing volume of data contributed primarily as the result of COVID-19. So it is critical now more than ever for businesses and consumers like us to take data security seriously. And a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. You can post your questions at any time in the right-hand Q&A window. We will do our best to read and consider all questions, but depending on the amount of time and questions we have, we will unfortunately not be able to address all of them. Of course, you're very welcome to email our speaker for any further specific question. I would now like to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Vinay Ahuja. He is a partner of DFDL and a fintech and technology specialist who head the firm's regional banking, finance, and technology group. And with 16 years of transactional and advisory experience, he is highly adept at advising companies in the tech and telco industries on their data compliance strategies in the Southeast Asia region. He has also been recognized as a distinguished practitioner by the Asia Law in 2020. Great having you here, Vinay, and thank you for participating in today's session.
Thank you, Woan Na. Look forward.
Now let's kickstart our session for today. Vinay, so in the context of your jurisdiction, please, can you share with us in terms of the level of prevalence of ransomware attacks, as well as top harms resulted from data breach and industries most commonly affected by such incidents, please?
Okay, firstly, good afternoon to everyone. Laos is being one of the smallest countries to the ASEAN markets, obviously is a little away from, at the moment, from the ransomware attacks and data breaches. There was a article few months back which kind of said that experts expected a ransomware attack every 11 seconds in 2021. So I believe so far Laos is on the backseat on that front. Let me divide this into two parts. When we talk about ransomware attacks, to my experience and generally to the public knowledge, we have not seen a lot of ransomware attacks or direct attacks in Lao PDR. But if we were to look at data breaches, again, we have not, or to my experience, we have not seen a direct data breach incident in Lao PDR. However, Lao houses a number of branches of financial institutions or companies which are subsidiaries to headquarters, either based in Singapore, in Malaysia, in China, in UK, in Australia. So yeah, so there has been, one could say, a flow down approach of a data breach incident that has either happened in Singapore, Malaysia, or Australia, or some generally data breaches in the dark net. So we have seen those kinds of incidents in the past, but still we are not aware of a direct data breach incident. When we call again to the harms, given we have not seen any ransomware attacks, so I would not call that there has been a monetary damage. But yes, any data breach incident these days on a company is a big taboo, that the security infrastructure was not good, or which causes a reputational damage. And in the world of social media, I believe reputational issue is one of the biggest, because kind of that changes the entire perception of a brand in the consumer side. Uh, when we are talking about industries, if I was to talk about Laos, two related industries can be: one is on the hospitality side, because Laos has got some chains of well-known hotels of the world. And number two would be on the financial institutions, basically any payments data breaches. And most of these data breach incidents have been related to the personal information, one could say. Uh, I don't, at least I'm not aware of any data hacks to kind of seek monetary compensation from them. But yes, the idea has been to gain personal information, which can be later used for phishing emails and otherwise. So that's kind of the space at the moment. But as the world is changing, though it's a negative term to say, I'm sure, but yes, sooner or later, the world will be, or each and every country of the world will be witnessing or in growth in ransomware attacks.
Thank you, Vinay, for sharing this. So indeed, security incident, be it minor or major, including an indirect data breach originating from headquarters in other countries, it can be devastating to an organization and leading, as what you mentioned, reputational damage and possibly a loss of customers and or trust. So from this perspective, please, can you share with us in terms of the development of governing laws regulating data breach incident in Laos? Is there any overarching data breach reporting legislation in place at the moment?
So again, I would divide them into, again, two sides. One is the ransomware attacks, and the second would be the data breach incidents. So when we talk about data breach incidents, then there is not a particular law dealing with data breaches only. But we have electronic data protection law in Lao PDR, which generally regulates the entire flow of data. That is, how the data comes in, what does the data do, and how the data can go out. So entire cycle of the data is governed by them. And it definitely mentions about certain actions and incidents about what happens in case of a data breach, or what are the consequences. Similarly, for ransomware attacks, it's the I'm forgetting the name of the law. It's the cybercrime law, which of Laos. Again, that deals with more of criminal activities that are happening on the internet. It not only limits to ransomware attacks, but any form of criminal activity which is happening through internet. And it lays down the consequences or the requirements or the reporting obligations that one has to do in case of any criminal activities. And given the ransomware attacks, if it's a criminal activity, then definitely the penal code also comes into the action, and you go into an entire different spectrum of things.
Thanks, Vinay, for this high-level response from the legal domain. So from the information presented, we understand that laws governing data breach incident in Laos continues to evolve, and it also remains sector specific as of date. And of course, we know cyber criminals, they do not discriminate, and we are seeing more and new sophisticated form of attack emerge regularly. So practically, how should an organization respond to an internal and external data breach incident? Can you share with us some of the top cyber security best practices?
Okay, if this is more towards what a best practice one should have, I would call it, let's go for the prevention first, and then later to what should be done in case of an incident. So as a prevention, there are 3 to 4 things which I believe, if implemented by an organization, then they can avoid some form of data breach incidents, and we call it as the best practices. So, and again, there is less of legal side to it, it's more of the security side. So first is obviously the strong password policy. That is a bottom rule what every organization should have. Second, we as more and more financial transactions are being done on your mobile phones, so it's always advisable to implement a two-factor authentication. I believe now more and more organizations have started doing it. Even we as DFDL do it. We have a 2FA to our email accounts. Third, one of the critical best practices would be importance to the physical security procedures and practices. So in recent times, with the internet evolving and everyone trying to secure things online, I believe an emphasis or there is less emphasis on the physical security. So I would still insist that the data where the data is being stored, proper physical security arrangement should be there in any organization to ensure there are no data breach incidents. Lastly, which I believe is the core of any data breach, is the user activity. So there should be some form of a policy or a protocol to monitor user activity of a particular organization, and any activity which is not in the ordinary course of business should be immediately flagged so that you can figure out if there is a potential or a risk of a data breach. And all these combined, any organization should also have a policy in place, putting down steps as to how a data breach incident will be handled by an company if there be.
Thanks, Vinay, for sharing with us some of these practical and useful suggestions of the technical solutions. And moving to my next and also the final question, and this relates to in the case of a transfer of data from Laos to other countries. So can you discuss some of the precautionary measures which companies they can take to better prepare for this sort of transaction in order to prevent any potential international data breach incident? And if you have some of the practical advisory experience on this front, please do share with us as well, please.
Yeah, so kind of I gave my thoughts on the, I would say the precautionary side. Initially, I would call it, if there is a policy in place, another best practice what you can add is, depending on the size of the organization, there should be a team policy. Like in this in today's era, we have a harassment policy, an employment harassment policy, a whistleblower policy, that a particular incident happened, what team will come into the action, and how a particular team will act on such incident. So taking those 4 best practices and with a team of and a policy and a team, I believe that policy should kind of list down 4 key areas which should be targeted immediately upon a breach. First, stop the breach. If there is an incident which has happened, is it a continuing incident? We have to pull the plug. And that, I believe, is one of the key factors to cut down the damage. That should be the first step. Second, obviously, is assess your breach and the damage. And that is where even experts like us come into the picture as lawyers. And assessing the damage technically means, obviously, 1, of the breach. Number 2, is the damage required to be communicated to your headquarters? Is it required to be communicated to the regulator? Do we require such data incident to be reported to the consumers or any third party or any other stakeholders? And I believe your lawyers or other experts should be consulted so that you can figure out what and to whom these should be reported to. And then the third step obviously comes is to notify the authorities and the regulators and the consumers and the third parties who are dealing with it. Lastly, we should monitor the damage done, because it's if a data breach incident has occurred, it's not that it will vanish in a day. Obviously, there will be what you call ripple effects or after effects. So one has to monitor the damage that has been caused and ensure that that damage is minimized to the best. So I believe these are the four things. If one does, then the risk or any regulatory or legal issues will be less, and obviously we can cut down on the actual damage caused by the data breach.
Thank you very much, Vinay, for breaking down the steps which organizations can take in preparing, be it a local and international data breach. They are very valuable for our audience's understanding. Now we will move on to the Q&A session and take a few minutes to go through some of them. Let's see what we have. Yeah, Vinay, so in the case of a ransomware attack or demand, is there a legal obligation in Laos for the payer to notify a regulator and or law enforcement agencies prior to paying the ransom?
Okay, so when we talk about ransomware, the law defines this as a criminal activity. And with this cybercrime law, given it's a criminal activity, then it has to be reported to the relevant authority that such and such incident had happened, and this is a criminal activity, and hence we are required to pay, even if after the payment, but it has to be reported. We cannot avoid a scenario, or it should not be the case that a ransom has been paid and we do not report it to the authority. That kind of goes against the law, and you can be subjected to a penalty under the law for it. And similarly for data breach, I believe there isn't that regulatory requirement for any notification and thing. But yes, for ransomware, because it comes into the definition of a criminal act, hence it has to be reported to the authority.
Thank you, Vinay, for this insightful discussion. Now, it is the end of our webinar. So it goes without saying that data breach response plan has become a critical component of doing business in this modern era. So for companies who have yet to create one or need a fresh one, we hope this session will be a useful tool where you can find some of the useful suggestions and key considerations when it comes to creating a new plan or to refine an existing plan for the purpose of improving data security posture. So if you have any related question, please do not hesitate to reach out to Vinay, the speaker, or myself via emails as indicated on this page. And this session has also been recorded and will be available at our DFDL website and social media. And we thank you for your attention, and it is very honored to have all of you in participating in today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ng Woan Na. Thank you all.